I have to say, since it's one of my last Sundays, I was using gospel lessons that I really liked. And I was thinking about feeding of the 5,000. And when I figured out using the feeding of the 5,000 for this week, I found out, well, it's going to be used again next week. So we'll figure something out. So anyway, we are a people that are just used to food. We are just surrounded by food. Cool picture. If you go to any of the stores, almost anywhere, you'll find 400 kinds of cereal. I've counted them. I used to be in the supermarket business. And it's a far cry from my parents used to go to Council Oak. I don't think they've been in existence for ages. The whole store was probably as big as this room, but it had everything my parents wanted. Now, they have stores that are what, probably 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times bigger than this. And you get all these places. They have of course, they have the meat market, and they have all the wonderful produce where you can get all the, especially down the hill, you can get any kind of pepper that you want, it's just wonderful stuff. And of course, there's a bakery there with these wonderful turnovers, and they use that crystal sugar on top, that kind of crunches, And you go to some of the more elite ones, and you have all kinds of other things that they just kind of put in the wall to entice you, all these wonderful cheeses that they wrap up, and you think, oh, this is wonderful, and you look at it, and it's $30, Those kind of cheeses, All of that. We're surrounded by that all the time. And we're surrounded by places, well, just take the fast food places, for instance. Now, we live down the hill in Cathedral City. And within walking distance, we have McDonald's and Burger King and Subway and what's that 31 flavor place? They're real handy. And then there's a whole plethora, I love that word, plethora, of fine food places that you can go to where you can get these $50 steaks, those kind of things. We are just so used to having food, having this 3 meals a day. But that isn't the case in a lot of other parts of the world. We have this tendency to think about, people not having the food and all this. And we think about countries far off somewhere, like Haiti or someplace like that is just in really, really, really bad shape. But there are a lot of other parts of the world that live on very little food. And I spent a year in Vietnam, and it was kind of fascinating to see what they ate. It might be some rice and some vegetables. And on a very special day, maybe they would have a fish or something with it. They survived on very, very little food. But that kind of looking for food is still right here with us, right close to us. We have people right here within our community and the fringes of our community that are in need of food. It seems like it's a never-ending kind of ministry that we should be engaged in, and we do engage in that. But I want to make a point that's saying, well, yes, that is extremely important, the feeding of people physically. But how about feeding people spiritually. To me, that's just as important, if not even more important, than feeding people bodily. You know, you can go without a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for quite a while. But to go without love and affection and support and the touch of another human being, how long can you go without that, without starting to basically dry out and starve? We are so used to having family, friends, all of that around us. But you imagine people that are starving spiritually. I saw a little commentary on Puerto Rico. You know, they had the hurricane that slammed through there, and they are still in terrible, terrible shape. And I'm wondering what their spirit is. And I'm sure there's pockets of, you know, strength where neighbors get together, but I'm sure there are others that are starving spiritually in that part of the country. And we can do the same thing. We can think it's off there somewhere. But it's right here with us, surrounding us in our community. And sometimes it's just the people that we meet at Stater Brothers or wherever we are, standing in line, and we don't know that they are starving for spiritual things, for affection and love. And I think that's what Jesus had in mind. We had the feeding of 5,000. But what was Jesus doing the rest of the day? The feeding of the 5,000? Very interesting. It's actually the disciples that are asking Jesus, well, shouldn't we be doing something? They were being a very good church council. Jesus is getting kind of, you know, the sun's starting to go down. And, you know, we, these people here, and I always get a kick out of what Jesus said. Would you take care of them? And the disciples looked at each other and looked at their coin purses and said, uh-oh. But Jesus then feeds them. Feeds them physically. But to back up, what was he doing all that day? He was teaching them. He was feeding them spiritually all that day long. Jesus thought it was that important. And even this lesson that they snuck in on me, there's the point in there that Jesus saw the people and had compassion, and he taught them, and he fed them spiritually. That's what Jesus had in mind, to feed people spiritually. Now, maybe you have had a time in your life where you didn't have much to eat. I can still remember days back in seminary that what are we going to put with the macaroni and cheese tonight? I had this deal on chicken franks, and they were like 39 cents a pound or something like that. We ate a whole bunch of chicken franks. I can still eat them to this day, but anyway. But you've probably been in that situation. Maybe you haven't. But I bet you've been in a place where your spirit was very, very low. Where something happened in your life. Maybe it was an illness. Maybe it was a death of someone close to you. Maybe it was something at work. Maybe it was something in the family. And your spirit was very, very low. You might not have known it, but Jesus was there, right alongside you, present to you, That's what Jesus does. Jesus kind of sneaks up on us and is there without our even knowing it. I've told a story before. If you've heard it, you can just kind of sleep for a while. The ELCA, way back in Nebraska, we came from Nebraska, by the way, and the night before we had the assembly, they had a camp meeting. Yeah, I'm waiting for Lutherans to say, they did what? Yeah. Anyway, they had testimonials. And the one that just blew everybody away was this lady that gets up in front of like 700-800 people. And she says, right off the bat, says, I didn't know I was going to be up here talking to all of you 10 minutes ago. The speaker they were supposed to have couldn't make it. Somebody knew she had this story, so they said, you're up to bat, get up there. Her story. She had gone through a very, very, very messy, awful, what other word can I put in there? Divorce. And had a couple children. She had gone back to school so that she could get a better job. It was finals week coming up, and her dad, who was her counselor, mentor, everything to her, died during that week. And she said she just didn't know what to do. The world just swirled around her. And she came out on the other side and thought, well, how did I get through all of that? Where was God? Where was Jesus in all of that? And then she started thinking about what had happened that week. Her friends came with support, take care of the kids. People brought food. People surrounded her and cared for her. Jesus was there taking care of her through that time of spiritual, in her mind, starvation. But Jesus is sneaky. Jesus is there when we don't even expect it. Jesus is there to say, I love you. Jesus is there to say, you are forgiven. I died on the cross for you. Jesus is there in the resurrection and in the body and blood that we will partake. Jesus is indeed our Emmanuel. God is with us. Now, we are all part of the body of Christ. Jesus feeds us. But what about those people that are starving for spiritual food? We are to feed them. We have the best restaurant in the world for spiritual food, right?
Right.
We have Jesus. Jesus says, come and eat. And Jesus offers us the very best spiritual food there is. He offers himself. Amen.